So I have this friend in Canada. I have several friends in Canada, but I'm thinking of this one in particular. By the way, this is an actual person I'm talking about. I'm not trying to be the kid in high school bragging about his Canadian girlfriend that nobody's ever met. Also, it doesn't actually matter for what I'm getting ready to talk to you about, but just in case you were wondering, real person. My Canadian friend, who definitely exists, and I talk about politics sometimes. We were talking about it just recently. With our election coming up soon here in the US, my friend asked me, "What are you going to do if Trump wins, eh?" He's a real person. And I chuckled and said, "Maybe I'll move up there with you." My Canadian friend lives in, let's say, Vancouver, which I'm told by this friend of mine and other non-fictional people is a lovely place. I'm mostly kidding when I say this. I have looked into what it would take to permanently move to Canada, but due to the combination of expense, having to come up with a good reason why the Canadian government should let me stay, and having to leave all my family and most of my friends here in the US behind, I'll probably never actually do it. And my Canadian friend knows I'm mostly kidding. As a living, conscious person in the world, independent from my imagination, he's able to read my manner and tone and determine when I'm speaking facetiously. But he still sometimes feels the need to remind me that, despite how enticing it looks from this side of the border, Canada's not perfect. And you know what? I have no doubt that my flesh and blood individual of a Canadian friend is right. Canada's not perfect. Canada has problems. Socially, politically, economically, there are aspects of Canadian life that are inequitable, that are challenging. I assume some of you watching this video right now are Canadian, and expect most of you have a list in your head right now of things about your country that you'd like to change, things that, until they change, you have to live with. But you know what I bet makes those things easier to live with? Healthcare. Not having to worry about going bankrupt if you experience one unexpected medical issue. Not having to worry about how you're going to afford to pay for medicine that you need to take so you don't die. Gun control. Not having to deal with 40,000 gun-related deaths every year, 500 or 600 mass shootings every year. If you're a parent, being able to send your kid to school without worrying about if they're going to get murdered that day. LGBTQ rights. Far-reaching and firmly established legal recognitions and protections for gay people and trans people and queer people of all categories. It wouldn't affect me directly, since I'm the most boring, white-bread, cis-hetero guy you could imagine, which is the opposite of what I do for my Canadian friend, since he's real and I don't need to imagine him. But even if you don't identify as part of the queer community, I bet it's nice to live in a country where the laws of the land acknowledge and respect the existence and dignity of that community. When Americans like me cast a longing gaze across our country's northern border, we're not assuming Canada is perfect. That's not what the "maybe I'll just move to Canada" thing is about. We know Canada's not perfect. But we also know, and some of us are even willing to admit, though it goes against everything we're taught as Americans, that in a lot of important ways, Canada's better. It's safer, more peaceful, healthier, more just. And it's not just Canada either. Australia and New Zealand seem nice. France, Germany, the UK, Japan. All of those countries have their problems too, obviously. But they also seem like they've got their shit together, or are at least capable of getting their shit together when it counts, in a way that we here in the United States, as a nation, no longer seem able or willing to do. That's what it boils down to for me. Not that other countries like Canada, where the friend I was telling you about earlier absolutely exists as a human being and not merely a rhetorical device, are flawless utopias, and not that the United States is a post-apocalyptic hellhole either. It's that places like Canada are better in ways in which the United States could be better too. It's that things in the US could be worse, but should not be this bad. Let's just take the three areas I have already referenced where Canada's outdoing us here in the States. Healthcare. Even now, 10 years after most provisions in the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, came into force, there are Americans buried in medical debt. Americans who struggle to afford necessary care and medication, underemployed or self-employed people who are unable to afford health insurance even with government subsidies, Republican-controlled states that have refused to participate in the ACA's Medicaid expansion, neglecting low-income residents, women who die from complications of miscarriages because they live in states with anti-abortion laws so strict that doctors aren't legally able to treat them. These are not insurmountable obstacles. Some of them, like the refused Medicaid expansions and the consequences of anti-abortion laws that have come in the wake of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, are self-inflicted wounds. Other countries have found ways to provide their citizens with accessible and affordable health care. Not just Canada, but every developed nation in the world other than the United States has some form of universal health care. We could be better at this. Gun control. Not only are we the only developed nation without universal health care, we are also the only developed nation with anything close to the rate of gun-related deaths or mass shootings that we have. It's not that other countries don't have gun crimes, don't have mass shootings. These things happen all over the world, but they don't happen in any other developed nation as frequently as they do here. Other countries have gun crimes and mass shootings, but other countries don't fetishize firearms. Other countries don't treat gun ownership as the most important right, as the one sacred right that must never be infringed. Other countries don't let the gun lobby have a veto over firearms regulations. Other countries don't bar government agencies from conducting research on gun violence. We could be better at this. LGBTQ rights. We've made some incredible progress in this area over the last 20 years, but just in the last few years, bigoted right-wing reactionaries have been doing everything they can to persecute and punish queer people. In his concurring opinion in the Supreme Court decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, Justice Clarence Thomas suggested that the court should reconsider its past ruling legalizing same-sex marriage nationwide. Numerous states have passed laws blocking trans people from accessing gender-affirming care, endangering trans youth, and threatening parents who are supportive of their trans kids. Conversion therapy is still legal in 24 states. With a few unfortunate exceptions, I'm looking at you, United Kingdom. Legally guaranteed rights for LGBTQ people are not controversial in the rest of the developed world. In Canada, where my very real friend is living his very real life at this very moment, same-sex marriage has been legal nationwide for almost 20 years. Gay and trans people have been allowed to serve openly in the military since 1992. Discrimination against LGBTQ people is banned nationwide. Conversion therapy is banned nationwide. And trans people are able to change their gender markers on official documents and are explicitly included in human rights protections nationwide. We could be better at this. We could be better at all of these things and so many more. In terms of total wealth and percentage of global wealth, the United States is the richest nation in the world. How many of the problems that afflict our country could be solved or at least significantly addressed if we made an effort to distribute and spend that wealth in more equitable and humane and responsible ways? There are 37 million people living in poverty in the United States of America. That's more than 10% of the total population. At the same time, we have some of the worst wealth and income inequality in the world. The richest 1% of people in the U.S. holds 40% of the wealth. 1% of the people holding 40% of the wealth. The overwhelming majority of all the people in the world with net worths of at least $50 million live here in the United States. There should not be one person in this country living in poverty, never mind 37 million of them. We could be better at this. We should be better at this. We need to be better at this. So, yeah. To my Canadian friends, real, of which I have several, and imaginary, of which I have none, please try to keep all this in mind the next time you hear me or another frustrated American pining for your frigid, spruce-covered land. It's not that we believe things up there are as good as they can be. It's that we know things down here are worse than they should be. We are an egotistical, petulant, belligerent people, but please be patient with us. And thanks for the ginger ale. Just like I like it, fucking dry.